Over 60? Discover 4 shocking carbs you must avoid and 4 incredible ones for transformational health. Ruth stood at the kitchen counter, the sun spilling through the window, illuminating her collection of cookbooks that had gathered dust over the years. This morning's doctor visit replayed in her mind. A boring checkup turned into a life-altering moment. Prediabetes? She shook her head as if the simple act could erase the diagnosis. The weight of it pressed down, a weight she had ignored while serving steaming casseroles and warm apple pies to her family. Was she really harming herself? Her mind raced, and she felt the tightness in her chest as thoughts spiraled. How could she have overlooked her health amid all the years devoted to her family's comfort? Desperation clawed at her as she swept her gaze across the kitchen filled with memories and the tantalizing scent of her favorite lemon meringue pie, the quintessential comfort food of her life. Yet that pie clashed violently with health advice, and guilt settled in the pit of her stomach. She loved it, and it was a love she now had to confront. No more snacks while watching her grandchildren. No more quick fixes of store-bought cookies unwound after a long day. If she cared for her family, she needed to change. But how? As her son Jake's voice echoed in her mind, filled with concern about carbs and sugars she had once dismissed, determination surged through her veins, firing her up. His passion for healthy cuisine was infuriatingly rational, and she saw it as a judgment on her lifetime of baking. Deep within, however, flickered a spark of resolution. She had to champion her health, not only for herself, but for her grandchildren. The thought stirred a mix of pride and anger. Why should she have to feel ashamed of her identity as a grandmother offering love through food? The irony felt cruel. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. A torrent of recipes flooded her mind as she leaned over her laptop, hands trembling with purpose. Online videos promised revolution, newfound health, and vibrant dishes made with fresh veggies and grains that danced in her imagination. Yet, amidst the excitement, a wave of self-doubt crashed over her. Was this truly for her, or was it just a fantasy catered to a filtered Instagram feed? Bit by bit, she pieced together a meal plan, layering it over the hold comfort foods had on her heart.
But each delightful discovery of healthy alternatives, spaghetti squash instead of noodles, zoodles instead of macaroni, felt like she was betraying her past. As Ruth savored a particularly bold carrot hummus recipe, the phone buzzed on the counter, shattering her momentary peace. It was Jake. "Mom, we need to talk. I'm worried about you." His words cut deep, slicing through her fragile resolve and threatening to pierce her newfound ambitions. She clenched her jaw, the kitchen around her suddenly feeling both claustrophobic and liberating. Would she dare stand up for her vision of health against her children's disapproval, or would she waver, retreating into the safety of her old kitchen habits? As she closed her eyes, breathing in the aroma of fresh herbs, a wave of anguish hit her, strength battling weakness, fear confronting hope. Ruth stood at yet another crossroads, the tension sharp enough to cut. What would she do next? What did it truly mean to change? A storm brewed within her, unanswered. All she knew was that this was just the beginning. Ruth placed the phone down gently, its weight now a symbol of her mounting inner turmoil. The world around her swirled as thoughts clashed with each other. The comforting hum of the refrigerator, the alluring aroma of herbs, and the stillness of her kitchen all faded into a background score of uncertainty. What did change mean for her? Was it simply about a few recipe swaps, or did it extend deeper into the essence of her identity? With each breath, she felt the tension within her ease, just slightly. Perhaps it was time to confront her relationship with food, not just for her health, but as a means of self-discovery. As she pored over the recipe for zoodles, a healthy alternative to pasta, her hand wavered over the save button on her laptop. Could she really swap out her beloved family meals for something more nutritious? That evening, instead of her typical casserole, Ruth decided to experiment in the kitchen. Grabbing a spiralizer she had tucked away in a cupboard, she pulled it out, dusting off the remnants of disuse. The act of slicing zucchini into delicate noodles ignited something in her, a fresh energy coursing through her veins. It connected her with the journey ahead, a journey that had begun in a very different space, the fear of disappointment and judgment from her loved ones. Determined to share this new experience, she texted Jake, inviting him over for dinner the following day. "I'm trying a new recipe. Come taste and tell me what you think." For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Was she asking for his validation, or was this her way of reclaiming her narrative, of showing him that she was no longer just the cook, but a revolutionary embracing her own agency? As she prepared the meal, she marveled at the vibrant colors of the vegetables, green, orange, and a sprinkle of red. Each chop felt cathartic, as the knife sliced through the criticism she had long held against herself.
With the lemon zest brightening the dish, she recognized an unexpected truth. Flavors could coexist, just like her past and future. When Jake arrived, Ruth felt a hint of anxiety, but it quickly faded as the welcoming smell of the dish filled the air. She placed the zucchini noodles topped with a homemade tomato basil sauce before him, her heart racing as he took his first bite. His face lit up, a genuine surprise blooming in his eyes. "Wow, Mom, this is really good," he exclaimed, and Ruth felt her chest swell with pride. The words brought a rush of warmth, dissolving the insecurities that had previously consumed her. She didn't just feed him, she had gifted him part of herself, a transformation that was already beginning to bear fruit. The conversation flowed, punctuated by laughter, reminding her that love wasn't solely tethered to baked goods. As the evening wore on, Ruth realized that she had within her the ability to lead this change, not just for her own health, but as an example for her family. But just as she began to bask in this victory, her phone buzzed again. Another message from a distant relative, one that made her heart race, a veiled comment about her health choices. It was frustratingly familiar, the kind of judgment she had worked to shake off. Would she let that comment drag her back into insecurity, or would she stand firm against it? A palpable tension hung in the air, and Ruth felt her heart pound as she weighed her options. At that moment, she understood that her journey was complex and fraught with challenges. The path of self-discovery was rarely straight, and every triumph could quickly turn into a test of resolve. Her mind echoed Jake's earlier concern. It was not just about the food. It was about reclaiming her story, asserting who she was, and forging her future with every dish she created. With determination reignited, Ruth sat up straight, crafting a response intended not just for the sender, but for herself. "This is who I am becoming." She clicked send, her spirit elevated, even as the shadows of doubt lingered nearby. What would it mean to quell those doubts moving forward? How far was she willing to go to embrace the life she was creating? The reality of transformation loomed ahead, a question mark as indomitable as her resolve, setting the stage for the next chapter in her life. Ruth awoke the next morning with the sun's first rays filtering through her kitchen window, underscoring the vibrant hues of the vegetables she had embraced the night before. That immediate sense of accomplishment from the evening's meal was overshadowed by the lingering anxiety of the message she had sent. As she busied herself with her morning routine, her mind wrestled with whether it was time to take more decisive steps toward a healthier lifestyle or remain tethered to the familiar comforts of her past.
Sketching out a new meal plan, she was struck by a sudden impulse to both dig deeper into her culinary ventures and challenge herself constructively. Guiding her hand as she crafted a shopping list, Ruth deliberately sought out ingredients she would never have considered before, the unfamiliar grains, pulses, and greens that now intrigued her. She was building a foundation for transformation, one that had begun with a single dish but could unravel into something broader and more profound. With the list in hand, Ruth drove to the local farmer's market. Each stall was a sensory overload, and she felt invigorated by the colors and the possibility they held. Striking up conversations with vendors about their produce, she found herself sharing her own culinary awakening, and she was met with encouragement. They, like Jake, treated her newfound path with respect and curiosity, helping to push her insecurities further down into the recesses of her mind. Among the stalls, Ruth encountered a familiar face, Maggie, her old college friend, who had always been an inspiration with her dedication to sustainable eating and wellness. Their dialogue quickly shifted from casual niceties to deeper discussions about health, allowing Ruth to openly articulate her journey. "What if," Ruth mused aloud, "I started a blog, sharing these small victories, my experimentation in the kitchen, the recipes, the struggles? It feels right." The idea resonated stronger than Ruth anticipated. Each word tumbled from her mouth like an unexpected revelation.
Maggie's enthusiasm charged the air, and together they brainstormed the potential content, themes, and the community Ruth could create. Ruth envisioned an inviting corner of the internet where others might find similar inspiration, a space for sharing experiences and offering encouragement amidst personal journeys of transformation. Returning home, she sat on her kitchen table, the blank screen of her laptop awaiting her thoughts. Would her voice matter? Could she connect with others who felt the same uncertainties? As she began typing, hesitation crept in again. What if nobody cares? What if I'm just another voice lost in the crowd? Doubt threatened to swallow her up. But as she looked around her kitchen, the remnants of last night's meal still lingering, she launched into her story anyway. She wrote about her culinary adventure with zucchini noodles and the surprising joy that transformed her cooking. The way it felt to reclaim her narrative resonated. The act of sharing her evolution infused Ruth with a sense of purpose. Each sentence built on the last, a tapestry depicting her growth, a narrative of health, love, and acceptance intertwined with the struggles inherent in change. Later that evening, as she closed her laptop, a sense of exhilaration mixed with trepidation washed over her. She was compelled to act, not just for herself, but as a beacon for others navigating similar journeys.
Would this new venture be her calling, or simply a fleeting moment of inspiration? Just as she savored that thought, her phone buzzed again. A different contact this time. It was an invitation to join a local cooking class focused on healthy cuisine. Ruth hesitated, weighing the challenge against her fear. The prospect of being judged, a specter she had fought so hard to dispel, loomed. Yet part of her was intrigued, hungry for the experience. The choice lay before her, one that could propel her further into transformation or anchor her back into familiarity. As she looked toward her laptop, the echo of her earlier success with Jake lingered. Would she muster the courage to step into this new class? In the realm of her evolution, one thing became clear. The act of cooking was much more than making meals. It had become a stage for her personal growth, an opportunity to confront her fears and embrace challenges. What awaited her next was an uncertainty that both thrilled and terrified her, marking the journey's unpredictable momentum forward. Would she take the plunge into the unknown, or would she play it safe once more? Ruth stood in her kitchen, mind swirling with thoughts of the cooking class. Each ounce of excitement battled critically against her hesitation, spurred on by whispers of insecurity. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that the leap could bring either freedom or a painful misstep. The invitation felt significant, a possible turning point that might propel her further into this new life she was tentatively shaping. After pacing around, she finally sat back down at her laptop. As she stared at the blank screen, her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Words escaped her momentarily. What if she failed? What if she stumbled, unable to keep pace with others? The thoughts churned angrily in her mind. But then she remembered her last blog post, the exhilaration she felt in writing about the zucchini noodles, and how those small victories made her feel alive. It was time to confront this fear directly. Ruth pushed herself to go beyond doubt. She decided to map out her relationship with cooking. She opened a new document titled My Cooking Journey. It flowed effortlessly at first. She wrote about her childhood memories of baking with her grandmother, the warmth of flour-dusted countertops, and the simple joy shared over homemade cookies. And for the first time since embarking on this new path, Ruth recognized a hidden truth. The kitchen was not merely a place for food preparation. It was a realm of connection, nostalgia, and discovery. As she reminisced, the memories painted a beautiful foundation, one that fueled her desire to reach beyond. With a new perspective on her motivations, Ruth confronted her fear of vulnerability. She composed a draft to share with her readers. The cooking class scares me.
But I know, just as I found joy in experimenting with new ingredients, this could reveal something about myself I've yet to discover. Each keystroke became a catalyst for deeper reflection, allowing her insecurities to transform into affirmations of potential. That afternoon, she made a bold move. Taking a deep breath, Ruth signed up for the class. There was no turning back now. What lay ahead was both daunting and exhilarating. She regarded the commitment she had just made as the first step into a larger world. But just as quickly as anticipation began to bubble within her, doubts again clustered at the edges of her mind. What if she arrived and everyone else was far more skilled? The creeping fear returned, tugging at her resolve. To combat the flood of negativity, Ruth turned to the blog again. She spent the next few hours crafting a post about her decision to join the cooking class, purposefully framing it as an adventure. The more she wrote, the stronger her conviction became. By sharing her journey publicly, Ruth no longer merely documented her growth. She was inviting others along for the ride, creating a community of shared experiences where vulnerability could flourish. As days passed and the class date loomed closer, Ruth began to prepare. She gathered cooking equipment and readied her mind with positive affirmations. Still, uncertainty lingered like a shadow. Would her fears truly disappear upon entering the classroom? Would she stumble through her first attempt at something new? The day arrived, and a jolt of nerves shot through her as she approached the cooking studio. Doors lay open, the bustling noise of chatter reached her ears, laced with friendly laughter and the sound of frying pans clattering. She hesitated at the threshold, paralyzed for a moment by the swirl of possibilities and what-ifs crashing inside her. Her heart raced, urging her to either retreat to safety or step into the rich tapestry of this new experience. And just as she decided to move forward, a voice cut through the clamor. Looking for a cooking partner? It was a woman who stood nearby, a warm smile greeting Ruth. The invitation was genuine, and with it came a spark reigniting her determination. One small decision, a connection forged, and a new chapter beckoned. Would Ruth seize this opportunity, allowing her inexperience to turn into a journey of learning and growth, or would she allow the fear of judgment to tighten her grip on the familiar? The answers awaited her just inside, if only she chose to take that first step into the unknown, embracing the potential of what could unfold. As she stepped into the room, the aroma of spices, onions, and fresh herbs wrapped around Ruth like a comforting blanket, momentarily soothing the tumult in her chest. She spotted vibrant ingredients laid out across several workstations, rich red bell peppers, elegant herbs, and pots simmering with savory liquids.
The energy was infectious, as laughter and chatter from classmates filled the air with camaraderie. Despite the welcoming atmosphere, Ruth couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that she didn't belong among seasoned cooks. Her pulse thrummed loudly as she introduced herself to her cooking partner, a kindly woman named Clara, who sensed Ruth's hesitation. "First time?" Clara asked with an understanding smile, her voice laced with warmth. Ruth nodded, suddenly aware of how her self-doubt clung as stubbornly as the aprons wrapped around their waists. "Don't worry, we're all here to learn," Clara reassured her, deftly chopping an onion with confidence. Ruth watched, captivated by Clara's assured movements, feeling both intimidated and inspired. Perhaps she was right. This could be a shared experience, an unsteady journey taken together. The chef instructor entered, drawing the group's attention like a magnet. With an enthusiasm that resonated deep within, he launched into the first lesson, sautéing techniques that could transform simple ingredients into magical culinary creations. Ruth's eyes widened as she absorbed every word. It sparked something within her. Could she really infuse passion into her own cooking? Yet, as the class began their first cooking tasks, doubt returned with a roar. While others moved effortlessly, sensing the rhythm of the kitchen, Ruth struggled initially to coordinate her slices and dicing. Her hands felt clumsy. As she fumbled, the whispers of inadequacy returned. What if she shattered her newfound resolution with each misstep? She looked briefly at Clara, who smiled encouragingly, urging Ruth to focus on the process rather than perfection. Determination flickered within Ruth as Clara offered a slice of her ginger. "Here, try adding this for flavor." Encouraged, Ruth carefully grated it into her sautéing vegetables, sensing a spark of transformation. A little zing resonated with her feeling of empowerment. The hues of the dish began to reflect her mind's changing landscape. Each step became a battle against her insecurities. As she stirred her dish with growing confidence, Ruth recalled the comfort she had felt reminiscing about her grandmother. Was that connection truly what she had sought all along? She began talking about flavors and ingredients with Clara, seeking her partner's suggestions with an eagerness that surprised herself. The class proceeded with how to plate the dishes, and as she carefully arranged her colors in a beautiful pattern on the plate, a wave of joy washed over her. Ruth found herself smiling genuinely for the first time since arriving. This wasn't just about cooking. It was about reclaiming a piece of herself that had been overshadowed by self-doubt. "Your dish looks fantastic," Clara exclaimed, lifting Ruth's spirits further and solidifying a bond that would transform this class into a memorable experience.
As they presented their plates to the instructor, Ruth felt an exhilarating rush of pride, finding solace in the fact that she hadn't retreated into her fears, but instead had grasped the opportunity to grow. But as the instructor began evaluating each dish, Ruth felt her heartbeat spike again, cloaked in fear as she awaited feedback. Would it shatter her budding confidence, or would she find validation? The moment came, and Ruth's heart hung heavy with anticipation. Her thoughts raced as she contemplated the moment's potential consequences. Would she learn from criticism, or stumble under its weight? The instructor paused at her dish and smiled. Whatever would unfold, she was ready to face it head-on, embracing the outcome, whether triumph or lesson. Stepping forward into growth was not just about cooking. It was about discovering what she was capable of against all odds. And as the fateful moment approached, one question loomed large. Would this be the spark she needed, illuminating the depths of her culinary aspirations? Or would it trigger the torrents of self-doubt she had tried so hard to silence? Ruth stood at the edge of the kitchen island, her breath caught in her throat as the instructor scrutinized her dish. Time stretched and warped, seconds turned into an eternity, each tick of the clock resonating with her doubts. The hesitant silence weighed on her, a palpable entity that threatened to crush her resolve. "Ruth," the instructor finally spoke, his voice steady but filled with enthusiasm. "This dish shows a great understanding of the balance between flavors and textures. I commend you for incorporating that ginger. It adds a delightful flair." A spark ignited within her, melting away layers of anxiety. His words coursed through her veins like the most exquisite of spices, and suddenly the kitchen felt less daunting. There was room to thrive, and for the first time, maybe she could actually belong. As the instructor moved on to the next dish, Ruth's heart swelled. This flattery wasn't merely praise, it was the validation she had yearned for, a tangible proof that she didn't merely cook out of nostalgia, but was emerging as a legitimate creator. "See?" Clara said, her voice bubbling with excitement as she leaned closer. "You have the talent. It's all about believing in yourself." Ruth felt warmth flush through her. The fear that had gripped her heart began to recede, rather like steam lifting from a simmering pot. After the class ended, the instructor encouraged the students to stay behind for an open forum. A part of Ruth wanted to slip away, basking in her moment of triumph and retreating back to where her insecurities lay dormant. But driven by an urgency to embrace her newfound spark, she stayed. Listening attentively, she noted how her classmates also shared their experiences, their struggles woven through laughter and camaraderie. It was a tapestry of talent, vulnerability, and aspiration.
Cooking is such a personal journey, the instructor began, steering the conversation towards growth rather than mere technique. You're all at different stages, but what strikes me most is the courage it takes to express yourselves here. In the kitchen, we confront not only ingredients, but our own limitations. Each word struck a chord within Ruth. She realized this wasn't a culinary class. It was a workshop of self-discovery, a place where every chop and stir was intertwined with self-exploration and aggressive confrontation of her fears. As conversations flourished, Ruth noticed a simmering doubt at the back of her mind. Was she self-sabotaging her own journey by wanting approval only? Would she only be satisfied if praised, or would she find worth in personal achievement? Clara's earlier words echoed through her mind. Day by day, rather than waiting for accolades, she decided to pursue feedback as a vehicle for growth. Perhaps her culinary passion was also about vulnerability, a way to confront the parts of herself that yearned for acceptance. The following week, Ruth arrived again at the cooking class with a renewed sense of determination. This time, when she stirred a new dish, a complex curry rich with spices, she repeated a mantra. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. As she shared her dish with others, the harmony of flavors came together seamlessly, only to be punctuated by her enthusiastic taste testing. "You're finding your voice," Clara admitted, a broad smile illuminating her face as Ruth took each critique to heart. Yet, as she eagerly anticipated her next feedback session, Ruth overheard snippets of her classmates whispering doubts about their abilities, voices dripping with discouragement. A sudden urge to help them stirred her. What if she could reflect the encouragement she had received? But how? With new ideas blossoming in her mind, Ruth saw an opportunity ahead, not only for herself but for others. As the class veered into discussions about collaborative cooking nights and flavorful exchanges, Ruth contemplated taking the plunge to lead a group challenge revolving around flavor infusions, a risky endeavor that could either forge bonds or expose her leadership's fragility. Her heart raced, the thrill of potential direction intertwining with trepidation. Would she take the chance to foster a community of shared growth, or coldly retreat into her fears, fearing it might fail? She felt the weight of her choice ahead, sparks of fear dancing at the edges.
The time had come for Ruth to face a new challenge, one that tested not just her culinary skills, but also her willingness to step beyond herself into the unknown. Ruth woke up the next morning with a lingering excitement buzzing beneath her skin, the decision to lead the group challenge echoing in her mind like a favorite melody.
This was more than just cooking. It was about creating a space where everyone could explore their culinary capabilities without the suffocating burden of self-doubt. As she prepared for the day ahead, she found herself questioning how to approach her classmates. Would they be receptive to the idea? What if they dismissed her? For a moment, anxiety threatened to overwhelm her again. Yet she pushed through, reminding herself of her mantra. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Today, she had to embrace the progress she wanted to see, not only in herself, but in others. When she arrived slightly early at the class, Ruth took a deep breath, steeling her nerves as she looked around the familiar kitchen. The spice scents hung heavy in the air, but motivate them. Thoughts of collaboration nudged her forward. Could she rally those who lingered on the edges, hesitant to step into the spotlight? As her classmates trickled in, she leaned against the counter, her heart pounding. When Clara arrived, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. Clara always radiated support, something Ruth realized she could lean into. "Hey, I've been thinking about this group challenge for flavor infusions," she said, her voice brave but wavering. "I'd like to lead it. What do you think?" Clara's eyes sparkled. "I think it's a fantastic idea. You have a great vision for this. Let's share it with everyone." Encouraged, Ruth felt the weight of her previous doubts shift, the possibility of connection outshining her worries. With each word they exchanged, Ruth became more resolute in presenting her idea to the group. As they gathered, she could see various expressions on their faces: curiosity, skepticism, and ultimately a few flickerings of excitement. "Okay, everyone," Ruth began, her heart racing as she commanded the room's attention. "I know we've all been cooking and experimenting on our own, and sometimes it can feel isolating. How about we come together for a challenge around flavor infusions? We can brainstorm ideas, collaborate, and taste each other's creations. It would be an opportunity to support one another. What do you think?" Silence hung heavy for a moment, a collective breath, before Clara chimed in. "I love it. I think it would be amazing to share our strengths." Several nods followed, and Ruth could feel the tide turning. As ideas fluttered about, each contribution built a tapestry of culinary aspirations. Little by little, barriers began to dissolve. Ruth felt a thrilling flame spark within her, the kind she had craved but hadn't realized could emerge from facilitating collaboration. But amid growing enthusiasm, doubts still trailed behind like shadows. Would they genuinely find her leadership effective? What if her inability to control the outcome led to disappointment? She recalled how she had choked back her worries with that singular mantra, now a lifeline that reminded her it was not just about her, it was about collective growth.
Clara stole glances at her as she interjected vibrant ideas, clearly eager to help Ruth shape this endeavor. Yet a nagging uncertainty brewed. What if Clara's support came with strings? Was it really her voice people wanted to hear, or was she merely riding her friend's coattails? As the class wrapped up, Ruth was filled both with exhilaration and apprehension. She felt the pathway to fostering a community open up before her, yet questions loomed over her like dark clouds. Was she stepping into this role out of genuine desire to uplift others, or was it a quest for validation? Ruth left the kitchen wrestling with these thoughts. Stepping into the role of leader had unveiled layers of her character and insecurities, forcing her to confront her motivations head-on. Determined to emerge stronger, she knew that embracing this journey meant battling both external and internal conflicts. But as she glanced at the inviting chaos of the kitchen, she understood. The true test awaited her not just in the cooking, but in leading herself and others towards something greater. What awaited her as she delved into these uncharted waters? Would she find a resolve to overcome her fears, or be consumed by doubt as the challenge loomed ahead? Ruth woke up the next morning with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation circling in her mind like restless currents. Today marked the first official planning session for the Flavor Infusion Challenge, and while excitement coursed through her veins, an undercurrent of self-doubt threatened to pull her under. What if she projected insecurity when she should be exuding confidence? This gnawing uncertainty fueled her resolve. She needed to act, not be paralyzed by fear. Arriving at the kitchen, Ruth surveyed the space with newfound purpose. The potential there was palpable. a sanctuary of creativity snagged between doubt and triumph. She took a moment to breathe, inhaling deeply through her nose, filling her lungs with the scent of cinnamon and garlic, a flavor narrative that welcomed her. Today, her mission was to harness those scents, to weave the tapestry of flavors around her classmates' contributions and experiences. As her peers began to fill in, Ruth felt the weight of their expectations, not just her own. She understood that without clarity and conviction, her peers would see her as just another face in the crowd rather than a leader. When Clara appeared again, Ruth decided not to hold back. They went over the agenda together, brainstorming ideas, setting rules, and determining how everyone could contribute uniquely to the challenge's success. "Ruth, you're on fire with this vision," Clara beamed as they worked. It was encouraging, but also intimidating. Ruth felt a flicker of resentment against her own hesitation. Was it unfair that she relied on Clara's unyielding enthusiasm, or was it merely a collaborative effort born from mutual aspiration?
As their classmates gathered, Ruth made a conscious decision to steer the conversation. She began with a compelling story about flavors, a gastronomic journey of her own, where the unexpected came together for magnificent outcomes. The room was quiet, rapt. That silence was intoxicating, a promise of support she had previously craved. Still, every idea she pitched was met with silent scrutiny. Was her confidence genuine, or was it merely a facade to mask her insecurity? "Let's organize breakout sessions," she proposed, voice trembling slightly. "We can tackle different flavor profiles and then come together for a grand tasting. Anyone can steer their group, and we'll all rotate roles." To her surprise, the suggestion resonated. Jaws, previously clenched with concern, began to relax. Hands rose with interest, and Ruth felt her resolve solidifying. She had ignited something beautiful and dynamic. Yet, amidst the growing enthusiasm, a familiar tension crept in. Was she genuinely embracing this leadership role for the right reasons? Would she rise to meet her peers' needs, or would her pursuit of competence devolve into a selfish quest for validation? The questions gnawed at her like slow-burning embers. The first breakout session revealed contradictions within her. As she watched her classmates engage with passion, Ruth found herself grappling with envy, a feeling she believed she had buried long ago. Each laugh and moment of collaboration felt like a spotlight that inadvertently dimmed her own presence. Did she truly want her ideas to shine, or did she crave acknowledgement for her leadership? As the hours passed, Ruth increasingly felt the weight pressing on her shoulders. Everyone had their unique flavors, but did she have a voice that demanded to be heard? Intent on bridging her fear and resolve, she decided it was imperative to embrace vulnerability, to approach her classmates not just as their leader, but as a fellow explorer navigating the nuances of culinary adventures. As the session concluded and everyone departed, Ruth stood alone in the kitchen, reflecting on both her growth and her internal conflicts. The moment brought clarity. She realized that true leadership could thrive in vulnerability. But as she walked home, that clarity gave way to an unsettling thought. What if this genuine effort to lead opened doors to discontent? Could she balance her ambitions with the well-being of others without losing herself in the process? The silent chaos echoed in her mind like a warped symphony, her next steps both exhilarating and terrifying. Was she ready to face not only her own expectations, but those of her classmates as well? The weight of the challenge ahead felt heavier than all the spices in the kitchen combined. Ruth awoke the next morning, wrestling with the unresolved tension that had nestled into her thoughts. Last night had shaken her foundation. This endeavor required more than vision.
It demanded a balance of compassion, authority, and self-acceptance. She had glimpsed a path to confident leadership, but those moments of clarity felt precariously linked to her ability to maintain harmony among her peers. Every new day meant more possibilities, but it also uncovered deeper insecurities. Stepping into the kitchen, she was greeted by a fresh wave of aromas, spices alive with promise. The kitchen felt like a blank canvas, but Ruth's mind was cluttered with apprehensions. Would her voice drown out others, or would it go unheard? She felt a tightening in her chest, a physical manifestation of her self-doubt. Perhaps she could channel these feelings into a strategy. Today she would not simply lead, but listen, attune herself to her classmates' perspectives as they moved through this culinary journey together. The group assembled, and Ruth sensed the mixed energy, enthusiasm tinged with a simmer of rivalry. They had all entered this challenge with the hope of proving something, not just to each other, but to themselves.
As she stepped forward, she could feel the gaze of her classmates penetrating like knives, each pair eager to evaluate the authenticity of her leadership. She began with a hint of vulnerability. "I want us to create a safe space. Fragile techniques, bold flavors, mistakes that turn into learning experiences. Let's embrace them," she suggested, her voice steady despite the whirlpool of uncertainty in her heart. The immediate reaction was palpable. Classmates exchanged curious glances, some shifting in their seats. Would her appeal for openness set them at ease or raise the stakes of judgment? When Clara smiled at her, it felt like an anchor, a reminder that communal success hinged on shared experiences. As they divided into breakout groups, Ruth assigned herself to a smaller team focused on fusion flavors. The ideas flowed, and in the exchanges, she watched her classmates bloom with innovation. Despite the pangs of jealousy that occasionally flickered within her, Ruth cultivated an unwavering support for each member's contributions. Yet after some time, the remnants of envy twisted through her thoughts again. It was the third dish she had prepared that day, an inventive combination of sweet and savory, when a classmate introduced a concept that ignited excitement across the table. Sitting back, her hands slightly trembling, she sought permission to lead a critique, wrestling with the confrontation that bubbled to the surface. Was she truly committed to fostering a collaborative environment, or merely reducing others to shadows while she stepped into the spotlight? "Let's taste it," she exclaimed, pushing herself to redirect the focus. With each bite, Ruth simultaneously enjoyed and critiqued, dissolving her insecurities in a shared culinary moment. A sense of unity began to blossom, but inside, she continued to battle her duality. At that moment, a voice broke through her internal chaos. "What do you think, Ruth?"
Came Clara's probing inquiry. It wasn't just a question. It was a challenge. Suddenly, the room lost its shimmer of camaraderie, spotlighting Ruth's hesitations. Her classmates focused intently on her response, and the weight of that attention felt like a spotlight shining down on her vulnerabilities. An internal war raged. Should she reveal her own uncertainties and risk shattering the fragile balance, or should she assert competence and confidence? Every eye awaited her insight, but at that moment, she understood. True leadership was not in the absence of doubt, but in the acceptance of it. "Honestly, I'm a bit torn," Ruth admitted, her voice steadying with conviction. "This is bold, but there's elegance and simplicity too. Let's build on that." As her words hung in the air, Ruth marveled at her own honesty, a flicker of self-acceptance glowing within. Yet deep inside, another question lingered, taunting her with the possibility of impending failure. How would her peers react to her vulnerability now? Would it invite deeper honesty or breed resentment? With an uncertain heart, she prepared for the next discussion, balancing on the knife's edge of vulnerability and leadership, where her true challenge awaited. Would she ultimately rise to the occasion, or would the weight of expectations crumble her resolve before her peers? Ruth stood in the familiar warmth of the kitchen, the aromas swirling around her like a warm hug, a stark contrast to the icy grip of uncertainty she had wrestled with for so long. Today, they would culminate the Flavor Infusion Challenge, bringing together the culinary ideas nurtured over the last few weeks into a cohesive presentation. The opportunity was ripe not only for shared dishes, but also for personal reflection on how far she had come. As she arranged her ingredients on the counter, memories of the overwhelming anxiety that once clouded her mind flickered through her thoughts. The self-doubt that had once felt insurmountable now shrank in the light of determination. She was no longer just a grandmother mastering recipes, she was a leader, a pioneer reinventing her culinary identity and embracing her past in a transformative way. Ruth glanced around the kitchen as her classmates filtered in, a mix of nervous energy and excitement buzzing through the air. She felt a twinge of apprehension at the thought of leading this final stage. But today, she wasn't just hoping for approval, she was ready to share her narrative openly, without pretense. "Everyone, I want to thank you for being part of this journey. It's been humbling to learn from each of you," she began, her voice rich with sincerity, loud enough to capture the group's attention. A small smile from Clara reassured her. "Today, we're celebrating our creations and the process. Let's share not just our dishes, but also our inspirations. What drove us to infuse flavors in our unique ways?" As dishes were plated and shared, Ruth felt the warmth of community rise.
The vibrant colors of vegetables and spices burst forth, each presentation telling a story of its own. One by one, her classmates articulated their ideas, lessons learned, and surprises discovered throughout the challenge. She marveled at their passion, a reflection of her own, igniting her further. It was in this space that her vision transformed from singular aspirations to collective celebration, a tapestry woven from each personal journey. At long last, it was Ruth's turn. As she presented her dish, a colorful mass of fusion flavors that reflected trials and triumphs alike, a wave of pride surged within her. I wanted to honor not only my transformation, but also the remnants of my past, she explained. Zucchini noodles topped with fresh herbs and spices, illustrating that change is not about rejection, but integration. Just as flavors can harmonize, we can merge past experiences with future aspirations. As her classmates tasted her dish and offered feedback, Ruth felt their recognition envelop her. This was validation she hadn't sought after. It emanated from a place of genuine connection. The exchanges became less about critique and more about nourishment, not only of body, but of spirit. What a revelation! Her leadership blossomed not in perfection, but in the beauty of collaboration. After the dishes were all presented, Ruth shared a bold reflection. I realized through this entire process that vulnerability is not a weakness, it invites connection. If we lead from our true selves, acknowledging imperfections, we reinforce our power collectively. The room filled with nods, and Ruth's heart soared. She had effectively harnessed her growth to uplift others. Soon after, the culmination of their challenge became apparent not merely through culinary success, but as an overt acknowledgement of progress within each individual. Her classmates began to express their gratitude, recounting how her leadership, grounded in authenticity, had fostered their own transformations. As the discussions flowed, Ruth could sense a shift around her. Each feedback session took on a new light. Her classmates began to open up, sharing vulnerabilities while celebrating their achievements. This wasn't just Ruth's story anymore, it had become their narrative. She had succeeded not solely in mastering a dish, but in creating an environment of trust that invited everyone into a dialogue of self-discovery. As they concluded the session over shared laughter and delicious food, a new strength emerged within Ruth, solid confidence in her abilities and a recognized capacity to lead. Each face around her expressed respect, a tangible acknowledgement of her journey toward fulfillment. She was no longer encumbered by self-doubt, she had conquered the insecurities that once overshadowed her. Standing there, she comprehended a profound truth. True achievement is not a solid endeavor, but a shared journey of growth.
With her proving competence now established, Ruth looked forward, ready to embrace every culinary challenge, not just in her kitchen, but as a catalyst for others. The road ahead would continue demanding resilience, but she was unflinching in her resolve. This was a moment of triumph, and Ruth allowed herself to bask in it. She had not simply rewritten her relationship with food, she had transformed her very identity. What awaited her was no longer a question of ability, but an exciting exploration of possibilities. So to you, my audience, consider this a challenge in your own lives. Reflect on your transformations, the doubts you face, and the connections you can foster within your communities. This is a pivotal moment. You need to subscribe now to witness even more stories of courageous transformation. Leave a like now to support and connect with our community stronger than ever. Your engagement fuels the quest for growth we all seek. Share your thoughts in the comments. What has sparked your own journey? Now is the time to take action and inspire others. Share this video with at least 5 friends who deserve to see how deeply transformation can resonate. Don't wait even one more second. The world is waiting for your story to unfold.